Hey guys, this is me Padma from Programiz and welcome back to this series on C programming. In this video, we'll learn about functions to divide our program into small blocks of code. We'll also learn different types of function available in C programming. So let's get started. In programming, a function is a group of related statements that perform a specific task. They help us divide a large program into smaller chunks so that it is easier to understand and modify them. Suppose you need to create a program that draws a circle and a rectangle of different colors based on user input. Instead of creating one big chunk of statement, to create this program, we can create three functions. A function to create a circle, function to create a rectangle, and a function to color the shape. Doing this helps us divide the complexity of the program and help us focus on the specific part of the program at a time. Now that you know why we need a function, let's see how we can create a function in C programming. On your screen, you can see the syntax of the function. Here the return type indicates the data type of the value that is returned by this function name. The function name is the name of the function and these dot inside the curly braces indicates the statement inside the function. Now let's use this syntax and create a simple function that prints good morning. Here you can see the basic structure of C program. Now I'll start with the return type first. So here I don't want to return any value from the function, so I'll use void as the return type. Remember that if a function does not return any value, use the void as a return type. Now I will write greet as the name of my function and don't forget to use the parentheses. These are needed to denote that this is a function. Now inside the function, I'll print good morning. So good morning. Now let me run this code. As you can see, nothing happened. This is because to run a function, we need to call it. Now to call a function, we use function name with the parenthesis. So we use the name of the function that is greet with the parenthesis. And I'll run this code. Now this time you see the output good morning. Let's see how this program works. Like any other C program, the execution starts from main and when it encounters the function call, the control of the program moves to the function definition. Now the code inside the function is executed and good morning is printed on the screen. Once the execution of function is completed, the program of the control moves back to the next line after the function call. Now to verify this, we can print the statement after the function call. So I'll print after function call, and before I run this, I'll add here backspace n. Now let's run this. As you can see, first the code inside the function is executed. Now the control moves back to the function call. So the code after the function call is executed. So we get the output good morning and after function call. And as discussed earlier, one of the good thing about the function is code reusability. Now once we create a function, we can reuse it any number of times. All we need to do is call it whenever we need. Now let me show you. I'll remove this print statement and I'll add greet two more times. So greet, and I'll run this. So this time you can see good morning is printed 3 times. Before we move to the next section, here is a quick tip for you. It is a good practice to use descriptive names for functions so that anyone reading the code will know what the function is doing by just reading the function name. Here we are greeting good morning, so we are using greet as its function name. We can also use wish morning or any other descriptive function name. So far, we have created function that just prints message. However, sometimes we might want to create function that accepts some value and performs some action based on that value. For example, suppose we want to create a function that accepts a number and computes the square of the number and print it. We can do this in C programming with the help of function parameters. A parameter is a value accepted by the function. Now let me show you how we can create function with a parameter. So let me get back to my previous code. I'll remove this greet function and I'll also remove this function call. Now I'll add another function, call it calculate square. So calculate square, and inside parenthesis I'll add function parameter int number. Now inside the function I'll do int square is equals to number multiplied by number. Then I'll print the number and it's square like printf bracket inside quotation square of %d is %d, that is after comma number comma square. Now here in the main function I'll call the function calculate square. Now let me run this code. Here we get an error. This is because when we create a function with a parameter, we need to pass the value while calling the function. So in the function call, I'll add 5 inside the parenthesis. Now I'll run this code again. This time you'll see the output. The square of 5 is 25. Now let me tell you what happened here. The calculate square function accepts the parameter, so we call the function by passing the value 5. Now the parameter number is assigned with the value 5, so when we use number inside the function, we are using the value 5. A function can also accept multiple parameters. Let's see an example. Here I'll change this function name from calculate square to add numbers. Inside the parenthesis, I'll change this number to int number 1 and I'll add comma and I'll add int number 2. Now I'll remove these two lines inside the function and I'll add int sum is equals to number 1 plus number 2. And I'll add print statement after that to print the number and sum. So I'll do printf bracket inside quotation sum of %d and %d is %d, that is number 1 comma number 2 comma sum. Now I'll remove this earlier function called calculate square and I'll add numbers with the value 8 and 9 as its arguments. So I'll run this. As you can see, we get the sum of 8 and 9, that is 17 as output. Here the value 8 and 9 are assigned to the parameter number 1 and number 2 respectively. In programming, values passed during the function call are also called function arguments. 8 and 9 in this case are the function arguments. Many people use parameters and arguments interchangeably, so don't worry about that. However, one thing you should remember is that the data type of parameter and argument should be the same. In our case, we have created int type parameters, so we pass integer values 8 and 9 during the function call. If we want our function to accept double or char type parameters, we should call the function with double or char values respectively. Go ahead and write a function that accepts double parameters and add them. Till now, we have been using void as the return type of our function. This is because our functions are not returning any value. In C programming, we can also create a function that returns a value. Suppose in our earlier program, instead of printing the sum inside the function, we want to return it. Let's see how we can do that. Here is the code from our earlier program. First, I'll remove this void and I'll add int. I'm using int because I want to return the sum of two numbers and the data type of sum is int. Now I'll remove this print statement and I'll add return sum. Here the return statement that is used to return any value from the function. Since the function is returning some value, this return value need to be stored somewhere. So during the function call, I'll assign the function call to an int variable, say result. So int result is equals to this function. Then I'll print the result using print statement. So printf result is equals to %d comma result. Now let me run this code. As you can see, we get the result 17, which is 8 plus 9. Here the function add numbers add two numbers, that is 8 and 9, and it returns the sum. The return value now replaces this function call. So this statement becomes int result is equals to returned value, which is 17. Hence we print the result and we get 17 as our output. The data type of the return value and the data type of the variable where the return value is stored should be the same. The return statement is the last statement of a function. When a return statement is encountered, the function exits. We can verify this by adding print statement after the return statement. So I'll add a print statement after the return statement and I'll write here after return statement. So I'll run this. You can see we get the same output. The print statement after the return statement is not executed. Okay guys, we need your support to keep these types of content free for all users. YouTube really likes engagement on the video, so leave a comment below, press that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get the engagement score high up so that more people can discover and enjoy these courses. In C programming, a function prototype is a declaration of a function. It provides information about the function name, parameters and return types. However, it does not include the body. Let's see an example. Here I have the code from our earlier program. If you have noticed, I have put the code of add number function after the main function. Now let me add the function prototype for this add number function. So I'll add int add numbers parenthesis int number 1 comma int number 2. As you can see, the function prototype includes the function name and return type and the parameters inside the parenthesis. Now let me run this code. As you can see, the program runs without any issue. In our program, we are calling the function before defining the function. In this type of situation, the function prototype provides information about the function to the compiler. Now during the function call, the compiler can now match the function call signature with the function prototype signature. If we are defining the function before function call, a function prototype is not needed. That's why we haven't included any function prototype in our earlier program. So far, we have been creating our own function. These types of function, we write the function definition ourselves, are called user-defined function. In C, there is another type of function called standard library function. They are built-in functions that are already defined in the library files and we can directly use them in our program. For example, the printf function. The printf function is a standard library function that allows us to print the output. The printf function is defined inside the stdio.h header file. That's why we need to include the file using include stdio.h. Similarly, the sqrt is another standard library function that allows us to compute the square root of a number. Let me show you an example. Here you can see the basic C program. First, we need to include mat.h header file because sqrt is defined inside the mat math.h header file. So I'll include math.h header file. Now inside main I'll use sqrt function. The sqrt function returns the square root of number as a floating point value. So I'll write float result is equals to sqrt, and inside sqrt I'll write 25 and I'll end this with semicolon. Now I'll print this square root is %f comma result. Now I'll run this code. As you can see, we get 5 as output, which is the square root of 25. In all of our program, we have used main. If we look into the syntax of main, it looks similar to a function. This is because main is also a function in C programming. It is the first function that is executed by the compiler, so every C program should include a main function. Now to revise what we have learned so far, here is a programming task for you. Can you create a program that takes two numbers, perform the multiplication of two numbers, returns the result? You will find the answer to this question in our GitHub repository, and also if you want to revise this concept, you can find all these programs right there. I'll put the link in the video description below. Now that we have reached the end of this video, it's time for Programiz quiz. What is the correct way to call the following function? Comment your answer below. See you in the next video. Happy programming!